All right, folks, today we bring you another update on the Linqto situation. This time I have the privilege of welcoming some of my friends, Brad Kimes, DAI, and the distinguished lawyer within the XRP family, John Deaton. I wish that we were getting together under different circumstances, gentlemen, but I'm very excited to update the community. John, we're looking forward to your update. You just filed a motion a few hours ago, and so this is a moving target. I appreciate you, and I want to echo your statements about sticking together as a community, and we want to answer as many questions as we can today and keep everybody in the loop on this situation. So thank you, gentlemen, for joining me. John, to start off with you, can you update on the motion that you filed today in the Bill Saris case that you have brought against him in the Southern District of New York?
Sure. And I did two things this week, and there's two parallel tracks. There's the bankruptcy case itself. I filed a motion on that Tuesday, which I can describe, basically arguing for a constructive trust. I'll explain it in a second. But last night, the motion you're talking about is I responded to a motion. I sued Bill Saris for fraud on behalf of Linqto customers. I've stated that I'm going to not charge attorney's fees, no matter how much work I put in this case. If I try at the verdict and spend hundreds of hours preparing, I won't take a fee. And if there's a settlement, so that all the funds go to Linqto customers to try to make them whole in any way possible. Bill Saris's lawyers, his first move was not to say he didn't commit fraud, not to say that, hey, I take responsibility, is I want Deaton off the case. Might sound familiar. In the SEC, Jorge Tenrero in the SEC filed a motion, get this Deaton guy out of the case. And Bill Saris, was some kind of fairy dust must have hit him because he ignored all our conversations. He claimed I was his attorney, that I was working for free for him too, because he was trying to get me on the board. And we don't have the time to get into it. It's on crypto law. I encourage everyone to read it. But Bill Saris's claim was that, hey, I reached out to Deaton and asked him for legal advice and legal work, and I offered to pay him, and he didn't take any payment, and he sent me a draft complaint of something, and he was my lawyer, and I thought the relation, it was confidential, and now he's suing me, throw him off the case. And that's all bullshit. 100%, and I proved it. I proved it with 15 exhibits that I attached to the motion, because in March, Bill Saris reached out to me and he said, John, I got a big problem. I need you to come onto the Linqto board. I want to get you and Linda P. Jones on the Linqto board. There's this new CEO. I hired him because I was going to retire, and he is going to steal everybody's money. And he's going to steal customer assets, and he's going to drive Linqto into bankruptcy. I need you on the board. And I said to him, what can I do? And he goes, listen, Norman Reed and Adam Henderson, these are board members. Norman Reed was the original general counsel for Ripple. Matter of fact, many of the people who bought Ripple shares, they got them shares because Norman Reed had many shares. That's how Linqto started. Norman Reed sold shares to Saris for Ripple shares, and that's how he started Linqto. And so Norman Reed, he said, listen, these guys are big fans of yours, John, because of what you did at the SEC case. They even donated to your campaign for U.S. Senate, John. If you get on the board, they're going to vote like you will, because they know that you really care about the community and customers. It's not about money. So I said, sure. But then I warned Bill that whatever you're telling me, I've got to tell them. So you're telling me all this stuff that Dan Cessolano's doing. When I get interviewed for the board before the vote, I'm going to disclose everything you say to me. And so to make a long story short, we had multiple calls and emails about getting on the board. And he was saying the regulatory infractions that were involved, that Dan Cessolano was exaggerating those, cut the platform off to drive it into bankruptcy, buy it out of bankruptcy for pennies on the dollar. That was the theory. And I said to Bill, look, Bill, and I've got this in emails, people, in emails. I sent an email that talked about suing him. And I said, Bill, you guys didn't commit fraud, right? I said, Bill, let me tell you something right now. If this is another FTX or Celsius, I will fucking sue you myself. And I will show you just how fucking relentless I can be when someone gives them their entire life savings to you and you fucking commit fraud on them. You don't want me. Oh, no way, John. That's why I want you on the board, John. And that's what went down. Okay. And he lied, did commit fraud, and all kinds of things. We don't have time for it, but I encourage everyone, if you're interested, read the exhibits. I even put the October 16th, 2023 memo from lawyers saying to him, you're committing fraud, you have excessive markups, you're creating FOMO, you're in violation of 3 out of the 4 Securities Act, you're going to get an SEC enforcement, stop doing this. And he said no. And then there was another memo that said same thing. And then Bill, because he didn't want to deal with the bullshit, right? He created this clusterfuck of a mess, a regulatory mess. And when it came time to fix it, he said, let me give it to this new guy. Well, guess what? The new guy's an opportunist who said, well, I'm going to take advantage of this situation. And I now can become a hedge fund manager and a closed-end fund and do all this. So that's the situation. That's where we.
So we have 2 separate cases, the bankruptcy chapter 11 that Linqto is now being taken into, and then you made another decision to sue Bill Saris, and you've already signed up over 2,000 people for that class action lawsuit, and you just said you have 15 exhibits in this motion, excuse me, that you filed today. Right. And so you're building a case here that Bill, there was some problems here, and those need to be addressed. We also have the bankruptcy process that we're now in. Now, this brings in our other guests as well, too, because you've gone after Bill. People are calling at you, John, why aren't you going after the influencers? And I've seen it myself, too. It is getting nasty out there. And I want to set this context by reminding everybody that, one, this was a very successful platform leading up into this. This was a company that was going to go public. And we have, gentlemen, all the 3 guests here with me, all invested in this platform. Nearly $500,000 from you, John. I have over 450,000 invested by DAI and over 330,000 here by Brad. Is that true, gentlemen?
Yes. Yep.
These guys all were invested in the platform. And as recent as December, DAI, I want to bring you in. You just tried to purchase more stock pre-IPO just in December. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, it was December, and a lot of people don't remember, but Linqto was claiming they were going to go IPO all the way to around that time. I don't remember the specific dates. And so, I went in and bought on the 9th of December, 2024, I bought $5,000 worth of Uphold shares. And just recently Uphold announced they were trying to look to either go public or be purchased recently. So it was a good bet,
Right.
And so that was December 9th, 2024. And then from, I think was it March when the new management came in? There was some kind of scuttlebutt between there and March about why they weren't going to go public and all that. And then, but, we were buying because it was a good opportunity. I still think, look, that's the irony of this whole situation. It was a good opportunity. I think this thing, and I've heard John say that he felt like a worst case scenario is getting your money back, but I've always felt like in this whole situation, I've never been worried about getting my money back, or I've never really been worried about whether or not I was going to recognize profits from this. I know it's a big muddy mess right now, but I still am optimistic about it for myself and everybody else. That's the truth.
Right. And I want to welcome in Brad, who said he was just doing the math on his Circle shares. In his Circle shares alone, and that equity and appreciation would be enough to make him whole. So there's a lot of equity in this platform. And Brad, you went to invest on the platform just as recently as January. Can you tell us about that?
Absolutely. I tried to invest in Uphold also because I'm a huge believer in what Uphold's doing.
Right.
And I was like, man, I want to get more Uphold. But I was shut down because we were in January and whatever was going on with the SPAC and they were trying to get readjusted or whatever. And they also let one of, in every state that they have customers, they have to have a license for the blue sky laws. And they let the Maryland license lapse, which is not unheard of. And they were like, well, you can't buy right now because you're located in Maryland and our license is lapsed and we're waiting for Maryland attorney or whatever state's attorney to whatever the process is to recertify that. And I was like, man, what a bummer. I can't buy. And then of course we all know what happened and transpired by then. But we were trying to buy up until everything really went to hell in a handbasket.
And I want the audience to know that, just so that everybody's aware that, DAI, Brad, these guys had no knowledge of any wrongdoing that may have occurred. And so I want to bring this back to you, John, as to where our energy and attention should be focused and what's the next step in this process.
All right, thanks. Listen, a lot of people, and I've seen some comments out there say, oh, you sued Saris, but you didn't sue your boys, DAI or Brad Kimes or somebody else. And I will share with you, when this all went down, I called John and Brad, right, at DAI, and I said pretty sternly, guys, what the fuck did you know about this shit? And then I asked them a question, and the question was, did you put money on the platform? Had they told me no, that they were, and listen, Linqto sponsored almost every XRP influencer out there, right? They paid them. They were promoting them. Linqto would not be successful without the XRP community. People need to know that 13,000 customers, 11,304 or 7 own Ripple units, right? So it's all really about Ripple and the XRP community. And so when they told me that they had, $400,000, $300,000. I was like, okay, you believed in it too, and then I interviewed witnesses that used to be there, including management, and I learned that Saris kept things close to the chest. So when they got orders of saying do this or this is what we're doing. For example, Ripple shares were out of Ripple shares, even though Saris had hundreds of thousands of more Ripple shares. He lied and said, oh, we're out. But on Friday, he kept that to himself. Even sales managers didn't know that, right? According to them. And so then it's like, okay, they invested their hard-earned money. As far as I'm concerned, Zach, if you volunteer, hey, this company is sponsoring me, right? You could be Tom Brady, sponsoring FTX, whatever. They're sponsoring me and I use them as a customer. If you do that and they pay you because you're good at marketing and advertising, well, that's America, man. Like I don't hold that against anyone. Now, if they invested $0 on the platform, I probably wouldn't be on the call with you right now, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Because then I'd be like,
I wouldn't blame you.
I wouldn't blame you.
Right.
Because you're just selling something to sell something. I'll say this too. It speaks to a creed that I and DAI have always have connected on, and that is we never sell anything that we don't use. And this is why, because when something doesn't go well, you and I are in the same boat. And I would ask every Linqto customer out there who's upset to ask yourself this. We can't fix this situation. We didn't know about this situation. So ask me what you would rather be in. Would you rather be in this situation by yourself or with us?
Right.
Right. We're here with you. And I think it's important for people to understand that, not only are we in this with you, we're not leaving. We couldn't talk before because we had NDAs. We're here and to see this through, just like we're here to see XRP through. We haven't left anybody in the downtime and we won't leave you in the uptime. This is another down moment and we'll be here right through every single bit of it.
And the other thing, there's another important part of this is that we haven't been able to talk about the thing until now, and we're trying to find out what's going on from John as much as anybody, because John's been a busy man. We haven't been able to talk lately. John even advised us to try to get on that creditor committee. Brad and I both applied to be on the creditor committee. We were rejected, but we were trying to be proactive behind the scenes to actually see if we could help influence a good outcome for everybody.
Yeah.
Zach, just so you know, I encouraged everybody to be proactive about their investments, apply for the creditors committee. There's 9 people on the creditors committee, and what the trustee did was just pick the people with the top assets. You know, Rob Cunningham could have been co-chair of the creditors committee because he was the number 2 person with invested money on the platform. I know that Rob was like, I'm not going to validate this process by participating, but he would have been on the creditors committee. So the people that are on the creditors committee all have over $1 million, you know, significant sum. One has $7 million. That's who's on the creditors committee. So I didn't make the creditors committee either because I have 500,000, not 1.5 million.
So let's hone in on the bankruptcy process, because we are now in it. And I've obviously had Rob on the show. That was before this process had gone through. It's now filed, it's now live, and this is what we're up against. And so, John, what's most important for the community to know about this bankruptcy process right now, and then the next dates that we have coming up on the hearings?
Right. Okay. So there's a hearing on the 5th, and that's not the most important hearing. The very, very important hearing is going to be the 17th of August. It got moved. What's being argued on the 5th is really a Sapien Group, which owns equity in Linqto, not SPV units, not Ripple shares, but actual equity into Linqto. They have filed a motion to transfer, and I could tell you why, and I don't blame them for doing it. And yes, they filed in Texas for reasons that benefit Linqto's management, the debtor, the jurisdiction. In Delaware, even if you're in bankruptcy, shareholders can vote the board out. Shareholders can try to oust the CEO, and it's not stayed by the automatic stay of a bankruptcy filing. In Texas, it's not as clear that you can do that. So that's why they wanted to be in Delaware. But the judge is going to deny it. I'll come back on your show and eat my words. Okay, eat my crow. The last time I predicted, I said XRP would be not a security by the judge, but Ripple would get tagged. And I'm as confident that the judge is going to deny the venue transfer. But it doesn't matter, Zach, because even if it does get transferred, yeah, things will get delayed because of being Delaware now, but federal bankruptcy law is federal bankruptcy law. It's federal, right? It's not state. It's the same law, basically. And so that'll happen. But I filed a motion in case we were going to be arguing the 5th. That's a constructive trust theory. And what I'm saying is that the bankruptcy court, the debtor, Linqto, that's the debtor. So if I say debtor, I'm talking Linqto. Has asked permission for the judge to approve a $60 million DIP loan. DIP is debtor in possession. Linqto doesn't have collateral. What they're using as collateral is our shares. Because they're saying because Bill Saris and other management didn't transfer the Ripple shares, the Circle shares, the SpaceX shares into the proper LLCs, segregated accounts. They didn't do all that the right way. Property belongs to Linqto, right? Because it wasn't transferred accordingly. Now, we all did our due diligence, Zach. I know I did. And I looked and said, okay, what if there's a bankruptcy? Well, it would be bankruptcy proof because it would be segregated in a separate account, untouchable by Linqto or the debtor. They didn't do that. So I said to the judge, look, if you allow them to do this, you basically are granting judicial approval of theft because they have what's called legal title. It's in an account they can legally access, but they don't have what's called equitable interest. It's not their property. They were holding it for us in trust, just because they didn't cross their T's, dot their I's, and do all the things that they're supposed to, judge. Don't reward them. Otherwise, every business out there would be like, well, I'm not going to do what I'm supposed to. Let all this upside create. Because when you file bankruptcy, Zach, your claim is valued at the date of the bankruptcy. So, for example, whatever Ripple shares are worth on July 7th is what your claim is. If Ripple upsides another 10x, they want to claim that for themselves. Right. And so I'm saying, no, judge, impose a constructive trust. Don't allow them to do that. And then let's try to see if Equities In or Hive will buy us out. Well, we'll take the shares and be the custodian, or maybe I'll go to the SEC, get a meeting with Paul Atkins, and be like, hey, can you give no action letters because of these violations? Let it be grandfathered in. Like the new entity didn't do it. Like, don't punish investors. Like, give us a shot at getting what we bargained for. That argument will be the 17th.
Who do
17th.
you, John?
Okay.
I'm a bit confused. John, you're filing in the bankruptcy. Do you represent are you involved with the creditor committee, or are you just filing it yourself? How does that work?
Well, I represent one person on the creditors committee who had reached out and said that they wanted me to be involved. And so I said, well, I can participate if I'm your attorney. She hired me. She's the co-chair. So I'm involved in that. I won't talk about what happens because it's confidential, but the 2,200 people who have signed up for me on that Google form, I'm independently on their behalf filing that. So I'm going to court and saying, listen, let's say it's 3,000 by August 17th. I got 3,000, right? More than almost 30% of the Ripple holders that I'm representing, Judge. You should listen to what I have to say, right? That's sort of the purpose of doing it.
While we're there, how do people join your suit?
It's pinned on X. Just write go to Johnny Deaton 1. You'll see it on my pinned thing. It's a Google form. You just sign into that, and then you're in it. And that applies both to the bankruptcy thing and this court action that I'm doing. But I want people to know that there's people out there that say, I don't want to put my name on a Google form for this case against William Sears. If there's a recovery, it goes to Linqto customers. It doesn't only go to who signed up for Deaton's thing, right? Like, I want them to know that if they don't, you could hate my guts, like, and be like, F Deaton, but if there's $1 that's won, and you'll get your share of it.
Right. Okay. Brad, did you have any follow-up that you wanted to get in?
Yeah, just Deaton, so is there a reference form for people who need to file the proof of claim or proof of funds form that you hear people talk about, so they can make sure they're filling that out properly?
Yeah, the deadline, I think, is November something. Or what we'll do is we'll make sure that that there's a form filled. We'll produce it. I'll send it to you guys. You produce it. Zach produce. Everybody will produce it. That says, here's a guide on how to do it. Some people have already done it, and that's fine. A lot of people didn't want to do it because they're thinking, does that restrict them, or do they waive their rights to anything? No, it's just identifying that you are a claimant in this process, that you have a right to participate in whatever is going to happen.
Do they need to fill out, when they fill that out, is their proof of claim, is it their cost basis, or is it what it's worth right now?
Well, I'll just tell you what I did. Zach pointed out that I have $495,000 on the platform. I took my Ripple shares and I said, well, Garlinghouse paid 175, so I'm basing it on that. Uphold was, valued at I think at $400 million company. When I invested in it, it's valued between $1.5 and $2 billion. So I I just did the same upside 3 times or whatever. So my claim of 500 grand, I put down at 1.5 million because of the unrealized upside. I used I saw Circle was at $200 a share or whatever it was, and just times my 738. I wish I had more Circle shares, right? My 738 Circle times whatever that dollar value was that day. So, and Zach, that's the other thing. In that motion I filed, I put in there that said, look, yes, the previous management didn't do it right, and they violated 3 out of the 4 Securities Act. There's no doubt about it. And it looks like the founder's going to prison. And I'm not saying that. There's a, DOJ investigation. And, but we know they have all those Circle shares, and we know who's entitled to them. Joe Smith has 25 shares. Deaton has 738. Jones has 8,000, whatever it is. So, Judge, when the lockup period expires, those people should get those shares. And it doesn't matter if they were accredited or unaccredited at the time, because it's now a public company. Anybody can own it. So that's part of it too.
Okay. Now, so we basically are at a couple different scenarios, it sounds like to me, where, worst case scenario, folks are going to get their money back. Best case scenario, they're going to get the value of their shares back. Now, with the company Circle, there's the potential of actually getting the shares transferred to your account. Can you walk us through those different scenarios, John?
Yeah. Right now, this is what could happen. Here's the first thing. First approach. Judge, we want them to just fix it, right? Just transfer the SPVs, do whatever needs to be done, and then can that be done? Now, the answer to that is, well, there's so many securities violations that you can't. Unaccredited investors, somebody may have only owned PolySign, and which is zero now, and not Ripple, but they have a claim that they're entitled to their money. And so, how do we deal with them, and how we deal with that? So I don't think it can be fixed. Plus, no one's going to use Linqto coming out of this situation, right? So next scenario, can there be a buyer? Can a hedge fund come in, or equities in, or Hive, and at least with the accredited investors transfer them? Or can you do the credit and non-accredited and get a no action letter, right? As I was talking about, from the SEC, and then deal with that. And then, so those are things. Or is it going to be what the current management wants, which is a closed-end fund, where you don't actually get your Ripple shares, but you get the value of your Ripple shares because you have this fund that has exposure to everything? Or is it a closed-end fund without the current management because it goes to a different hedge fund manager? So those are all the scenarios. If the judge doesn't agree with the constructive trust theory, then we may be headed to liquidation. We may be headed to closed-end fund or whatever. If he says that he's going to allow them to collateralize our shares, because you have to pay these people, right? All these lawyers are being paid. Bankruptcy is very, very expensive. It's millions and millions of dollars. And so if Linqto doesn't have it on its own, then is the judge going to allow them to do that? So, or is the solution that we all accept that there was 18 million that was sold of our shares? Just so everybody knows, if you owned let's say I had 1,000 Ripple units, I really don't now. I have 997 because Bill Saris, without permission, sold those shares. I believe he had the intent to buy them, and he was going to get the arbitrage, right? He was going to sell them for, 100, buy them in the secondary market for 90, and secure the difference. Brad Garlinghouse, I don't know what tipped Brad Garlinghouse off, but something didn't smell right. So Brad Garlinghouse, unbeknownst to us, canceled any secondary purchases to Linqto. So Saris wasn't allowed to rebuy the 3% that he sold. So that 18 million went into an escrow account. Of course, the current management wants to use that 18 million to fund the bankruptcy. So these are the things that are at stake. So I don't know which option it will be. The creditors committee attorneys will be working with them and seeing, is this going to be a situation where they come together and do what's right for customers? And even if the customers, like, we have to take a short haircut, like that 18 million or something, or is it going to be current Linqto management is going to say, no, we're going all the way for this closed-end fund or something else. It's our property. That's the law. And the creditors committee and Deaton and everybody else then comes in and we're fighting in court tooth and nail.
And
So
go
I
ahead.
need to understand something. I'm sorry. If they did the closed-end fund route, does that mean that PolySign shares and Linqto shares, assuming Linqto is not going to exist, those are SPVs too? Would all of that be thrown into the closed-end fund with Circle, Ripple, and everything else?
Yeah, it would be. So if you had, let's say you're only if you are if you bought just only PolySign and Uphold, and there's a closed-end fund, and let's say your investment was $20,000. Your investment now would be $20,000 of a fund that has not just those two companies, but has Ripple, SpaceX, Uphold, all of that. So it might be attractive for someone in that position. If all you had is Ripple shares and you only want Ripple shares, then you don't, and let's say you got 50 grand of Ripple shares, you wouldn't have 50 grand worth of Ripple shares. You'd have 50 grand worth of a fund that has Ripple, SpaceX, and all the others. They're trying to say, but you still have the same value, right? Versus, yes, you're not going to be a Ripple shareholder, but you have the value of those Ripple shares in the shares of the closed-end fund that you have. That's their theory. I'm not saying that I want it or I agree with it. I'm just answering the question.
But, and to just quickly, so that closed-end fund would come with a management fee and then a 2 and 20 or something of that nature, which, people did not sign on for.
Right. No, that's true. And then the other question is, well, who's running it?
Right.
Is it Dan Siciliano, or are we going to be able to hire Warren Buffett's firm, whoever, right?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
that's the thing. And so, and are there restrictions? Can you impose instructions? I don't know. The first thing comes down to whether or not the company is going to agree with that theory that I put out there of this constructive trust. If they fight that tooth and nail and say, no, it's our property, meaning when I say our property, it's Linqto's property, then we're probably headed for a big fight. And I will fly to Texas and I will participate in that oral argument. And I'm pretty aggressive in my motions to the judge. And I say that if you allow this, then you just provided a blueprint of theft that will be approved by the court. I didn't say
John,
this, but it'd be shame on you if you allow that to happen.
one of the things that I heard you say that I thought was very important that most people probably don't realize is that you said that when people hear bankruptcy, they get all freaked out, which usually they should. But you said this is not the average. This is not a typical bankruptcy. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, Liz, bankruptcy, this is different. Let's say that your regional bank goes bankrupt. Well, you had cash in it. Well, cash is, a very liquid asset. Here you have very illiquid assets, and you have assets that were held in trust for customers, not supposed to be commingled like, deposits are. And so that's one big difference in the asset. Listen, there will be companies, guarantee you that this is going to happen. There are companies that specialize in bankruptcy that will take advantage of that fear that you're talking about, DAI. And they say, well, how much do you have invested in this Linqto fiasco? And someone says, I got 60 grand of my hard-earned dollars. Well, I tell you what, buddy, we'll give you 50 grand right now. You sign this assignment of your claim in bankruptcy court to me. I'll give you 50 grand for that 60 grand. Well, that 60 grand could be worth 250 grand now, right? With the upside. But people are impatient. People are FUD is being spread, fear, so they would sell it. If I was all about money, I could get several people together, come up with say $30-40 million and start buying people's claims because I know that it's going to be worth much more, and then retire, right? But that wouldn't sit well with me, so I would never do that. But there are companies that do it, and I don't blame them as long as people are told what they're giving up.
Yeah. And this brings me to the timeline, because like you said, we're locked in at kind of the day that the bankruptcy process started as to what your value and your equity would be. And so if this does get drawn out, what I worry about is that we're going to lose that upside that potentially could be happening over the next year if this is a bankruptcy process that gets drug out. So can you give us an idea on timeframes, the good, bad, the good and the bad scenarios on time?
Yeah, if we're talking a year from now, this bankruptcy, it's been a disaster and people have lost a lot. They maybe get their money back, but they're not getting any upside. The other reason, some people ask me, and I don't blame them. I want to make this clear. I don't blame them, but some people ask me why I'm not part of that Sapien group, fight that they're doing. And remember, anybody who's arguing something, always ask what's their motivation. John Deaton has 500 grand invested, for example, and here's what I own. Sapien is the equity holder. Understandably, they don't want to be wiped out. Like employees, you could take Ray Fuentes and other people who didn't know any of this. Maybe like let's give benefit of doubt. No one knew any of this, which is the way it looks like and what I've uncovered. They have options, the shares, like they put their blood sweat into trying to build wealth for themselves. So they took, instead of compensation, they may have took more shares in Linqto. They don't want to be wiped out. And I get it. I don't blame them. But do you know what happens if we're locked in at our cost on the day of the bankruptcy, and then the shareholders of Linqto would get the upside, not the customer? So what I've been saying is that my bias is for the customer. I can have empathy and I can have sympathy for Linqto shareholders. I'm not talking about SPVs. I'm talking about Linqto equity. Right. My heart goes out to them. There's good people that work at these companies. Just because the top guy is a crook doesn't mean that everyone under that person is a crook. People need to know that, right? I guarantee you there were really good people that worked at FTX, for example. I guarantee there were good people at BlockFi. I guarantee there were some good people at Celsius. But I'm going to root for the customer first. After they're made whole, if Linqto equity holders can also be made whole, then great. But there's only one side for me, and that's the customer side.
Right. And if I could ask you, John, just directly, because you mentioned it and I wanted to follow up. Do we have any evidence of any other potential wrongdoing by anybody besides Bill? Because I've talked to Linqto employees off the record. I've talked to other people, and I've obviously talked to you guys here. I haven't heard anybody mention any other names or anybody else that was really doing any wrongdoing other than Bill, which is why you filed this case.
Yeah, I mean, listen, what I've uncovered, I don't pretend to have all the different emails. Like I don't have a list of emails, but people have asked me, and like they've said, what about this person? What about that person? Sometimes people can, as far as the lying about the shares and all of that, from what I've been told and seen, it was Saris, and he didn't even share some of that stuff. And there were emails from people, employees saying, I don't know if we're supposed to do it this way. And if they didn't, he would fire them, right? There's emails that I know that says, do it this way or you're fired. Well, you got a mortgage to pay. It's easy for us to judge someone. So I think there may have been a couple people that didn't necessarily know all the stuff, but they were trying to get Bill to do things better.
Right.
And it's almost like being in a, Zach, this is how I describe it. Imagine that you have a ship captain who's keeping most everything to himself, and he's doing bad stuff, and the ship starts sinking, or the boat starts sinking. And you have someone who's like trying to plug the holes, right? They know that the ship's kind of like rocky, might be going down, and they're trying to plug their holes. When it all goes to shit, it's easy for me or you or someone else to say, well, you should have left earlier, and you should have, did this or do that. But when you're in the moment, and if you believe you got good relationship and you're doing your best to plug the holes in the ship, that's why I said I can have sympathy and empathy for people. So I haven't uncovered anything that where there's an email that says, do this, and an influencer or an employee was like, yes, let's do that illegal. Like but I haven't seen all the internal emails. What I've been able to gather so far.
Right. Now,
I only sued Bill Saris.
correct. Yeah. And Brad, DAI, I want to give you guys one last opportunity. Is there any other questions that you wanted to ask John?
No, but I have two thank yous. One is a thank you to John Deaton for, not many people know, when we were still under NDA and we were not allowed to talk about these things. John Deaton was pivotal in XRP Las Vegas in dealing with Dan Siciliano, the new leadership of Linqto, being on our stage, because there was a threat that was existing to cause protests for him participating on stage. And it was negotiating to get John Deaton to moderate that panel to get the answers we were looking for, not realizing that someone was looking to sabotage the event itself, right, for no gain other than to gaslight people, when we're working as hard as we could in an adult, mature fashion to get Dan on that stage to address questions in a candid manner. And the only way to get it done was to have John Deaton do it. And I thanked him then, and I thank him again now publicly, because it was really important, because that was a very, very key conversation that went on that stage, because John Deaton asked him directly about the actual SPV units. And as a very key piece and very key conversation, as far as I'm concerned, what he commented on that. Number two, I want to thank you, Zach, because you've done an amazing job covering this leading up to this. I know we've talked personally offline about it, and I've been very impressed with you and the channel. You know that from day one. I think you're a rising star in this space. And I just thank you for being involved in the way that you've covered this so well and objectively, that it gives us the platform to come out here and let the audience know exactly what's happening, because you get to ask the questions and continue the conversation. So thank you both.
Absolutely. My pleasure. DAI.
Just so you know, let me just comment real quick. Brad, that video is probably going to be used in evidence if need be in the bankruptcy, because there was very direct answers, you know what I mean, to those questions. The shares are there, and even Circle would be distributed. Remember that. So that moment is actually could play a role in the scenes. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
And really quickly, I want to say to that point that, and I know we're getting long on time, but I just want to say to that point, for the people who thought that because we weren't able to speak, that we weren't standing with them, now know that we were working as hard as we could in a mature legal fashion to bring the kind of answers to this community while being handcuffed by an NDA and being really attacked by others in the community because we wouldn't do their bidding. And I still won't. Go ahead.
Yeah. And Brad, I remember being backstage at XRP Las Vegas, and I was telling Brad, I remember talking to Brad about, you got to put John Deaton up there. John's the one that can get the answers to the questions. And the SPV answer was, when I heard that, I've played it several times or put it out there. Those SPVs are there. I mean, that was said by the CEO. And so now that's a good I mean, that's a good piece of video.
And if people had been successful in disrupting that conference and his panel, we would never have that video.
Right.
Zach, the one thing I would say is, there were some people that said to me, like, John, why are you siding with Dan? I mean, I wasn't siding with Dan. I was just trying to answer some questions and get off the stage. And I just want people out there that, there's a lot of assumptions that get made. And that was one of them. Like, oh, he must be on Dan's side. Read my motion where I'm talking about this isn't their property, that he can't do what he's trying to do. So I just wanted to say that.
Well, that needs to be made very clear. Everybody on this show right now cares about the investors. That's what it's about. It's not about innuendo and all this stuff. All that matters is the investors, which we are. I mean, so that's why we've been working behind the scenes, even when we weren't allowed to say anything. We've been working behind the scenes and talking to John and asking how we can help and all that. And that's what we'll continue to do.
Yeah.
Just like XRP and the class action with John Deaton. This isn't about vengeance. This is about justice.
Yeah.
Well, and on behalf of the XRP family, I'm excited to continue defending and giving a voice to everybody that's fighting on behalf of our community. I'll end on an optimistic note. To me, this just solidifies and reiterates how valuable XRP, Ripple, and what we've invested in actually is. They wouldn't be coming after this if it wasn't just another little opportunity passing by. So I will end on that optimistic note. We're going to link up down below where folks can join you, John. And I will say, too, that I think it is a shame, the negative things that I've been seeing coming towards you gentlemen who have done so much for our community, considering that you were not knowledgeable of any of this, and you were just trying to bring a good resource to our community. And that's exactly what I do as well, too. And so let's stick together as not just an XRP family, but everybody involved in this Linqto situation. John, it was a pleasure to finally meet you in person at Vegas this year. I want to thank you for your service. You continue to be a leader and a real bulldog spearheading this effort. And so any closing statement from you, John, as we wrap this up?
Listen, just this community was taken advantage of because it's such a great community, right? 13,000 Linqto customers, 11,300 some all in Ripple. They have other shares, but primarily Ripple. 75,000 people who stuck together, made a difference in the SEC v Ripple case. And so I just echo your comments. I own Bitcoin, I own other stuff, but I've argued with Bitcoin community and other communities and saying there is no crypto community like the XRP community. And so we'll get through it. It's just another bump along the path of prosperity.
Yep. Amen. Amen. And hopefully we'll be having another good time in XRP Las Vegas next year. I remain optimistic that we'll get to the bottom of this and we'll get it sorted out. So we'll have it linked up down below. You guys can feel free to get in touch with John. I appreciate you guys for coming on the show here today. And everybody on the way out, if you could just help us out by sharing this video out far and wide to everybody that could be affected by this Linqto situation, we would greatly appreciate that. Okay. Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, Zach.
I am your host, Zach Rector. I really appreciate all of the love and support. If you want to support the channel, just remember that you can start by smashing that thumbs up for me, sharing this content far and wide, and everything else is at my website.